We begin with An Artist Creed by Jan Phillips. I believe I am worth the time it takes to create whatever I feel called to create. I believe that my work is worthy of its own space, which is worthy of the name sacred. I believe that when I enter this space, I have the right to work in silence, uninterruptedly, for as long as I choose. I believe that the moment I open myself to the gifts of the muse, I open myself to the source of all creation and become one with the mother of life itself. I believe that my work is joyful, useful, and constantly changing, flowing through me like a river with no beginning and no end. I believe that what it is I am called to do will make itself known when I have made myself ready. I believe that the time I spend creating my art is as precious as the time I spend giving to others. I believe that what truly matters in the making of art is not what the final piece looks like or sounds like, not what it is worth or not worth, but what newness gets added to the universe in the process of the piece becoming. I believe that I am not alone in my attempts to create, and that once I begin the work, settle into the strangeness, the words will take shape, the form find life, and the spirit take flight. I believe that as the muse gives to me, so does she deserve from me faith, mindfulness, and enduring commitment. That's called Artist's Creed, and it's by Jan Phillips. So welcome everyone to the final session in our Grief and Gratitude in 2020 creative series. This one is a bit different than the ones we've been doing before. We've kind of been building and working towards this one. This one we're going to take more time, and we are going to create an art journal spread that is going to encapsulate some imagery, some color, and some words that are all about our grief and gratitude in 2020. So hopefully the process has had you kind of making sense of that, even in between the processes, kind of dabbling and taking kind of some that to heart and thinking about what are those sorts of things. But as I've said before, and I will say again, if you don't find yourself in a place of clarity, closure, certainty, that's okay. It might not be that you're ready, and it might not be that it's actually necessary for this. So don't feel that you should have had this distilled to some kind of essence of something. We're really just in a process, as we just heard in the beautiful words that were shared before. And I chose those words that Artist's Creed to share with you because I really believe that so much of what Jan is sharing in that is really what this work is about. It's about honoring a sacred space for ourselves to show up. It's about seeing our creativity as so much more than if it's beautiful or it's not beautiful, if it's worthy or not worthy, depending on whose standards or whose definition. And so I really want you to invite that into this process here today. I want you to invite this into this idea that it could be bigger than you, that it might not be about your skill, that it's not a reflection of who you are, whatever you create here today, that it really is about taking part in something larger than yourself, challenging yourself, getting to know yourself, and taking some courageous breaths and just being with this part of yourself, your creative self, and just seeing what's emerging. This little creation we're going to make here today is one of many, many creations you are going to make in your whole life. So just like lower the stakes here. This does not have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be beautiful. You can make mistakes. It can just be whatever it's going to be. There's no such thing as mistakes, really. It's just going to be what it's going to be. And so I want to invite you to have that compassion for yourself, for your practice, for your skills, for your journey in this creative work, and for yourself at this point in the year as well, too. So hold some compassion for yourself. And please also just continue to build on that courage that you've been showing throughout this creative process and doing things you don't know, and taking kind of risks and kind of trusting that maybe it will work out or maybe it won't. Just notice your thoughts as you go through this process. Notice if you start to have a really mean inner critic that's showing up and saying nasty things to you, that it doesn't look good or you didn't do it right. those sorts of things. Just notice that and set it to the side. It can be really helpful for us just to notice it and hear it, and then make space between us and those thoughts. A lot easier said than done, but if you notice it, you're halfway into the battle of that, I would say. So far in this work, we started out with creating an installation, a little physical sculpture of found objects. And that was really meant to help us make sense of where we were at in the moment, in that time and space. And if you made another installation today, it would probably look different. We started with that kind of notion of where things were at the moment. And then in the second lesson, we wrote a letter to ourselves, where we used our imagination to cast our gaze forward and imagine what this whole thing might be about for us, to understand maybe where some of our resilience is coming from and where this pain and suffering might be taking us, just imagining that. And of course, last week we started to get really clear about the imagery that we wanted to use in this art journal spread. And we created a little palette of colors that really expresses that grief and that gratitude. Again, that kind of duality that we've been talking about the whole time. And so hopefully you've had a chance to pull out some imagery or a palette that works for you. If you haven't, that's okay. I said last week that I wanted to make sure that this process was something that you can just do even if you didn't have time to prepare, and that's okay. So if you are not clear, or you're not sure if you want to work with your own imagery or your own palette, I want to encourage you to use my palette as best as you can with whatever mediums you have. You can also have permission to use my imagery too. My imagery is quite broad, I would say, and could likely make sense for you as well. But I also have shared in the where this video is as well, some other ideas for imagery as well too. So if you're not connecting with my image and you weren't able to find your own image, you have permission to kind of flip through some of those ones as well too. I chose some imagery that I thought would be easy to depict, easy to sketch, or to print out and work beautifully into this. So right now, without further ado, we are ready to name and to honor and to complete this ritual of looking at grief and gratitude in 2020 and really recognizing what this whole year has been for us. So I'm going to walk you through the supplies, and then we're going to spend some time. I've got my camera set up, and instead of seeing my face, you'll see my hands and have my voice walking you through the different parts of this process. So for supplies, what you're going to need is an art journal or a piece of paper. And so I'll just show you kind of the art journal that I'm working with here. It's about the handprint size. I'm kind of just working smaller here today. And what I've done, you don't have to do this depending on the weight of your paper, is I just have some white gesso that I've added onto the cover of this. If you don't have white gesso, that's okay. You can use white paint, or acrylic paint or something like that works as well too. Just to make our pages a little bit thicker, because I'm going to be working in watercolor and we just don't want it to get kind of yucky and mucky. We're going to kind of be doing some things to it. So we want it to be able to hold up. If you don't have an art journal or something that you're comfortable working with, a piece of paper is wonderful as well too. Because we're going to be doing something around grief and something around gratitude, you might want to have two pieces of paper, and you can just kind of make them as little standalone pieces as well too. That's perfectly wonderful. You're going to need a pencil and eraser. I said that for some of us we're going to be sketching, but for others there's permission for you. If you found a beautiful image in a magazine or something like that, you're just going to want to have it cut out, and you in the sketching part you can just watch through that or fast forward through that or whatever you want to do and prepare your image to be laid down. You're going to need your color medium of choice. And again, last week you likely played through and figured out what medium you're going to be working with when you created your palette. I have my watercolor set here that I'm going to be working with. If I can get it open. Give you a little glance at it, you'll probably see it. I'm going to be mixing my own colors and just using watercolor. If you have acrylic, that's beautiful. If you have pencil crayon, that's wonderful too. Pastels will work. Really, this is a very fluid process, and I'll walk you through kind of some of the adaptations that you might want to have around that. You're going to want to have a black marker of some kind. I've got my Sharpie on hand, and I also have kind of a watercolor, a Tombow black marker too, just for some of our lettering. You're going to want to have some small scraps of kind of just different colored papers, what I'll say. I have some kind of old scraps of paper from an old book that I think I'm going to use, although you might see me in the video change it out into something else. But basically just some kind of contrasting color or something a little bit neutral that will just work with. We're going to be doing our lettering on there. A glue stick or a medium, a sticky medium, or white glue or something like that as well, just to glue the papers down as well. I'm going to be using just some Liquitex matte medium, but you do not need to have anything this fancy. You can literally use a glue stick or white glue. And you are going to see me using my very fancy hair dryer to just speed up the drying process. If you want to kind of do this all in one swoop, you're going to want to have your different layers dried. So it's really great just to use if you've got a heat gun, that's great. But if you don't, you can just use a hair dryer as well. Or you can just enjoy the time and let your page dry and then come back to and from when it's ready for the next part of the layer. So those are the supplies. I kind of want to give you a bit of an idea as to where we're going with this, although I don't want to explicitly kind of name it for you because I want you to have permission to play with it. But I'm going to show you some imagery here right now of kind of what the inspiration for this is. And essentially what we're going to be doing is taking some color and then layering our sketch or our thing on top of it. A very simple way to have the interplay of color and imagery happening as well too. So you can see some of these images that I'm showing you here today. That's essentially where we're going with the inclusion of a few pieces of words or writing that are going to be about grief and gratitude. So now that you have kind of a bird's eye view of the process, what I'm going to tell you, what I'm going to kind of walk you through next is I want, of course, always just to start with a meditation. We're going to spend some time just arriving and grounding, and then I will switch to my overhead camera and just talk and walk you through the process. And you can sit down with your supplies and make marks and sketch with me as well, too. So now that we have all of the kind of knowledge and the idea of where we're going, it really is important just as part of this sacred ritual of kind of naming what's going on and really taking this grief and gratitude out of us and onto the page to just spend some time arriving. And so as we've done in the past, I want to just invite you just to close your eyes, take a few breaths, and we're going to just spend a few minutes just really arriving to this moment and really preparing ourselves for this art journaling spread. So take a few breaths, settle into your seat. Feel the shifting of the moment, of the part of yourself of thinking and planning to the part of yourself that's ready just to be. Just notice your body, notice your breath. Notice anything that is calling to your attention. It might be pain, or a busy mind, or a feeling. Just notice whatever is really calling you. Thank it for its presence, its voice, its call. Just see if you can just let it recede just a bit, just fade away a bit. What I want you to do is I want you just to open your hands wherever they may be, on your lap, wherever you are. We're going to really focus on our hands here today because we're going to be working with them, using them, having them be a comfort and an ally and something we're connecting with. So just feel your hands. Just notice them wherever they're at. Just check in with them. Have you noticed your hands today? What's going on with them? Again, they might have a sensation or a pain or a feeling. And just notice that. Just notice the texture of that, the sensation of that. Just be with that for a moment. It may just be that you have just a general sensation of your hands. This kind of life that's always there, but that we often aren't paying attention to. And what I want you to do is I want you just to take your hands and make tight fists. Just tense your hands as tight as you can for a few seconds. Hold them tight, 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 tight squeeze. And then just let them go and be open again. And notice the feeling. Notice the energy. Notice the sensation. Just notice all that living that's going on inside of your hands. Let's do that just a few more times. Take a tight fist and just squeeze really, really, really tight so that you're activating all of your muscles, your nerves, everything for a long time, as tight as you can, and then just let it go. And just be with the sensation of the aliveness in your hands. And one more time. Take your hands and just squeeze them very tight. Hold them as tight as you can, and then release when it feels right. What I want you to do is, in your mind's eye, I want you just to imagine those hands placed out in front of you. Just imagine that they're kind of floating up and away to somewhere safe. They're leading you somewhere safe. What is that safe place? Is it a place you know? Is it a place that's imagined? Is it in a forest or on a beach or in a sacred place that you've been once before? Just let your hands take you to this destination. And just let your hands kind of lead the way through this destination. Perhaps your hands want to touch something around you. Perhaps there's objects nearby that require feeling and touch and sensation. Perhaps there's a feeling just in the air or kind of around your hands and the place that you are. This safety, this security. Perhaps there's temperature. Just allow your mind's eye just to take you on a bit of a journey with your hands in this sacred, safe spot. Just see what your hands want to do. Follow the impulse and let your hands go where they need to. Touch what they need to. Be witness to whatever it is they need to witness in this sacred place. Keep breathing. Keep playing. Keep noticing. In a moment, what I want you to do is I want to imagine that this sacred, special energy of this place, wherever your imagination has taken you to, I want you just to imagine your hands absorbing all of that specialness, all of that beauty, all of that grace, all of that magic that's around you. Just imagine your hands really absorbing, taking in, really receiving that and holding it inside. When you feel like you've really taken in all you can in your hands of that specialness, I want you to imagine yourself leaving that place. Your hands are done. They're ready to go back. They're ready to retreat away from this imagined world to someplace else. And follow your hands back into the now. Rest your hands again into the place where you are now. And notice all of that you've brought back with you. All of that sacredness, all of that joy, all of that special energy. We're going to take that energy in our hands today, and it's going to be a guide for us as we go through our art journal spread. So when it feels right, take one last deep breath. Let it go. going to open our eyes and we're going to begin by making colored marks. So we're ready to begin by making marks on our page. If you can recall my palette that I had last week, I have a palette around grief here and a palette around gratitude. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose kind of the lightest color that I can. And I'm essentially going to just I think I'm going to use this begin color that I had here. And I think I'm going to use this fragments color here. And I'm going to make a big colored kind of splotch. I'm going to kind of just let it flow, let it be a little bit messy, and I'm going to make one big splotch in the background of each one of those colors. So I'll begin by mixing So what you can see is I've just made just two big kind of messy splotches, taking up kind of most of my page. Depending on the medium that you're using, you might want to, again, I think the key for it is just to make sure you've got kind of a lighter color on the back because, again, we're going to be layering our sketch or our image on top here. So don't worry about the messiness of it, or focus mostly on making sure you've got a nice soft kind of or a delicate kind of tone in the background that things will layer upon well. So I'm going to just dry this and then we're going to move on to the sketching component of it. Okay, so my colored backgrounds are dry now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that reference photo that I had talked about before, the seed pod for my gratitude, and the dead kind of dying flower for my grief. And I'm just going to sketch it on top of there. So again, if you are choosing to maybe print out an image like this and cut it out, this is your chance to kind of figure out how you want to overlay it on top. You can see there's no right or wrong way to do this. You could do it small in the corner. You could do it kind of covering up the whole way. There's a million different ways you can do it. I think what I'm going to do is I think for my seed pod is I think I'm going to take it and I'm going to kind of go about here a little bit off the page there, and then my words will be over here. And for my grief, I think I'm going to take it and kind of put it off the page here. So my words will be here. I'll kind of have a picture up there and a picture down there. You can watch in the process as I do that. But you can play around with the layout and think about kind of what your image is, how it wants to go, knowing that you're probably going to be getting about 1 sentence worth of text in there as well. So I'm going to start my sketch. you can see in just a few moments here, I just did some really quick sketching. I think I'm going to spend a bit more time kind of cleaning it up and making it a bit cleaner, but you can see how I've done the offset piece here and the offset piece here with the intention that probably my one line of text will kind of scroll down here and my other line of text will kind of scroll down here. And of course, these will be statements, kind of poetic verse that we have around our gratitude and, sorry, bumping my camera, and our grief as well too. So we can check back in after I've cleaned these up, and we will be ready to start thinking about adding more color to them and adding more definition to them, and then moving towards our lettering. Okay, so I have spent a bit of time kind of just putting in a bit more detail in my sketch. I have like a bit of an issue happening up here. My gesso seemed to have picked up my my pencil for some reason. I won't erase, but we will work with that in the flow. So I'm going to take some time here and I'm going to actually add some other layers of color on here. And I'm going to choose to add color from my original palette. I'm going to work kind of in complementary colors within that other palette and just kind of layer on some other colors just to fill in the detail. But you could actually just do these as stark black and white or black on top of your color and let that be the only color that you want. It would be totally up to you how you want to do that. So I'm going to just spend some time kind of adding in, filling in my paint here. Okay, so I have kind of just a base color of both of those, and I think I'm going to just spend a bit more time letting it dry, maybe adding a few more layers, and then the next point we'll do some outlining or some detailing depending on what you want to do. I'll give you some options if you're collaging. Okay, so I am going to the next step for me and for you, depending on if you're sketching as well too, is once you've got your colors laid on, is for you to be able to do some, if it feels right, to do some outlining. I had recommended a black pen. I'm probably going to use my Tombow because it's a water-based pen, and just do a little bit of outlining and detailing, and then maybe when I'm ready to set it, I'll just use a thin Sharpie. So just a word for you if you've deviated from this process that I'm doing and you're feeling like, oh, I don't know what you're doing versus what I'm doing. If you've cut out your images and you have them kind of laid on your color, this is your time to play with layout of it, to play with how you have it cut and the placement of it, and paste it down. Once you've got it pasted down, you're ready for the next segment, which is to add in our lettering and our words. If you are using other mediums like acrylic paint or pastels, that sort of thing, it may not feel right for you to use outlines. Again, I'm using markers, that sort of thing. If you don't want to outline or you want to use pencil or whatever, you can also just have the shape of whatever your image is laying on top of your circle and call it a day there too. So please know that all of this is optional. So I'm just going to kind of do my little detailing bit, and then we'll be ready to do the words next. So you can see I just added in a bit more shading and detail, used my water pen and just kind of did a bit more. So the next step for us is to add some words to this. And of course, we've always been looking at the interplay between our gratitude and our grief. And maybe just for the sake of your understanding, likeness, making sense of the process for yourself. I'll just remind you again, this over here representing grief for me was a dying flower, because I have been, this year has really meant for me to not spend time with a loved one who has limited time with us, somebody who we know is on their way out, and it has meant that I can't see them and spend time with them, somebody beloved to me. So I felt like the fading flower was really representative of this. And this seed pod that kind of overplays and kind of connects together represents this deepening relationship, deepening connection and growth kind of inwards towards each other of my oldest son and I, and the time that we've been able to spend together. So that imagery came to me, of course, last week, and I was able to play with the sketches of it. And now I've got the palette and the imagery that is reflective of it. And so the next piece I want to do is I want to just build in some language, some words, to be able to kind of summarize basically what I just shared with you, what the definition or what the meaning, what the significance of each of these symbolic images are. You don't have to do the word piece to it. I know some people don't like words. Often in art journaling, though, we are playing with the interplay of images and words together. So if you want to lean into that, I would encourage you to be courageous and compassionate again with yourself and move into that. So I had suggested cutting out some paper. I've got kind of this old book you can see here today. And I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to kind of paste it on here and paste the other one on here. And I'm going to write the words grief here and gratitude here. Or the other way around too, maybe. I don't know. I'll have to play around with it. No, I think I like that better. And what I'm going to do is I have distilled a sentence that I want to write as well. And I'm not going to get all fancy about it. I'm just going to use my handwriting to pair with the grief and gratitude statements. And these, I was ready at this point after having done the imagery and gone through the whole process to just write a summative statement kind of about what it is that I'm feeling. You may need to do a bit more writing, and that's okay if you feel like you need to do a bit more writing. If you feel like you don't know how to write or what to do next, what I would say is just to write to the image and give the image a voice, right? So if this flower had some words for you, what would this flower be saying? And just see if you can write for a bit and then just underline a couple of the key words. And you might even just want to have a couple of the key words there or a few words. It doesn't have to be like a full sentence, or it doesn't have to be poetic. It can just be like even grief in 2020 or something like that. So the statements that I'm going to work with here, if you can read my writing, is I feel grief for the fading temporary is going to be my language here. And on this side, I'm going to write, I cherish the new growth and deepening so much gratitude. So again, I'm not going to get fancy about this. I know some of you have beautiful letter writing skills, lettering, those sorts of things. There's lots of fun tutorials or fonts that you can teach yourself to do. I'm not very good at that. So I'm just going to embrace my own handwriting, and I'm going to write the words again on grief on here and gratitude here, and paste them on with my medium, and use handwriting and my marker to do that. So you can follow along at that point. And then the next step for us is we will be virtually complete, and I have some suggestions for where you can take this afterwards. So I will jump into that now. So I just strengthened my lettering a little bit here. I'm kind of sitting back, looking at it, trying to decide, does it want something more? I was playing with the idea of writing 2020 up here, or maybe writing 2020 kind of along the ways. I haven't really decided. I will share with you the final image. But at this point for the process, this is kind of our place of completion where we've got our color, our imagery, and our words all coming together to explore what 2020 has meant to us. So just as a final close, I'd like to kind of come back and walk you through how we can close this ritual together in a way and feel like it has some closure for us and some completeness for us as we move forward. Made it. You have come to the place of completion and made your meaningful art journaling spread. Again, remember, just remind yourself it doesn't have to be perfect. That wasn't what it was about. It was about having a process, a sacred place for you to make sense of through your expression and through your art what this year has meant to you and all of the complexity of the grief and the gratitude that you have felt this year. So as a close to this process, what I want to do is I want to bring us back into our hands because that's, of course, where we started. And I want you to take your piece and take your creation, and I want you just to bring your hands to it. Lay your hands down next to your creation. And I want you just to feel, again, connect with that strength in your hands, connect with that joyousness, that beauty that we welcomed into our hands. And I want you to really feel the gratitude. Take a moment and really just let those words, that imagery, the piece that you have chosen for your gratitude to really sink in. Just feel it. Just feel that gratitude washing over you. And when you're ready, I want you just to connect with your grief. Take your hands to the page and just really recognize the grief, all the things that you've lost, whatever it is that you've captured in this page, and just feel that for just a moment. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to just let all of that go. Just say farewell to the grief, farewell to the gratitude. It was here, it has served you. You don't need to cling to it any longer. Just see if you can create some space between you and it. And use this as a moment to kind of offer some completeness. Maybe not closure, but some completeness for this moment, this time and space where we are, so that we can make space for what it is that comes next for us, so that we can continue to follow the flow of life unfolding in front of us in new and varied ways. And when it feels right, you can just close your page or put your image aside and just exhale and let it all go. Now, as always, we want to check in with where we're at and what our own needs are. It might be that there is something else that is required for you. It might be that you have somebody that you need to talk to, somebody that you should call, somebody who you want to connect with. It might be that you need to go for a walk. It might be that this whole process has started a new thing for you and you have more art to make, more writing to do, more creations to make, more sketching, or more color to work with. Make a plan right now for what it is that you need to do next. And it might be appropriate that you write that down or even share with somebody what that plan is so that you can kind of really formalize it and make it possible for the next piece. So Thanks for trusting me in the process. Sincerely, I mean it. There's lots of people on the internet sharing things, and you came upon me for whatever reason. And thanks for trusting me in this process from beginning to end. It really does mean a lot for me to be able to offer you the tools and a process to be able to express and create yourself. I, of course, always benefit and really value the process myself too, and value you as a witness being able to share in my creations and my work as well too. So thank you for witnessing my creations and my work. And we will see you on the flip side of the calendar, where, of course, there's more creations to be made and more courage for us to show up in this world and more compassion for ourselves as well. So thank you, everyone.